Hey there, friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we have a special episode full of mystery and horror. We'll be sharing 4 real Appalachian Trail horror stories found on Reddit. Get ready to have your hair stand on end, as these tales will make you believe in the unknown. Let's get started. Story 1: Disappearance in the Mist. Author Trail Walker 92. Hi everyone, I'm Trail Walker 92, and I want to tell you about a hike that still gives me nightmares. It happened last fall on the Appalachian Trail. I've always loved solo hikes. They help me find solitude and escape from city life. At that time, I was working myself to the bone and just needed to get out into nature. I set out on a week-long hike, and the first 2 days were perfect. The weather was great, clear skies and a cool breeze. On the third day, everything changed. I woke up in the morning to find that a thick fog had settled over the trail. I couldn't see more than a couple of meters in front of me. Deciding not to risk it, I stopped, set up my tent, and decided to wait for the fog to clear. The fog didn't clear. After a few hours, the cold seeped through my layers of clothing, and I decided to light a small fire. However, the wood around was damp, and it wasn't easy. I gathered some dry twigs and lit a fire. Sitting by the fire, I heard strange footsteps. They sounded muffled and were approaching me. At first, I thought it was just the wind playing with the branches, but the footsteps became more distinct. I stepped out of my tent and started listening. The footsteps were getting closer, and I began to hear a quiet singing. It was some old nursery rhyme that I couldn't quite remember. "Who's there?" I shouted, but only eerie silence answered. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped, and an absolute silence, even more frightening, fell. The fog began to lift slowly, and I saw that I was standing on the edge of a deep ravine. One more step, and I would have fallen. My tent and things were behind me, but I couldn't understand how I ended up so close to the edge. I returned to my camp and decided to pack up and move on, despite the fog. When I reached the nearest shelter, I told my story to other hikers. One of them, an old and experienced hiker, said it wasn't the first time people encountered something strange in that area. He told an old legend that many years ago, a group of children disappeared here, singing a song to avoid getting lost in the fog. Since then, many have heard their singing, but no one can explain why. The rest of the journey I spent in tension, every night expecting to hear those footsteps and singing again. With every step I looked back, checking if something invisible was following me. Finally, when I reached the end of my hike, I felt relief, but also a kind of emptiness. It seemed like I was back home, but the feeling that someone was watching me didn't go away. This story changed my attitude towards solo hikes. Now I always go with someone, and every time I hear footsteps or singing, even if it's just my imagination, I remember that fog in the ravine. Something on the Appalachian Trail remains unexplained, and I no longer try to seek answers. Story 2: Eyes in the Dark. Author Nithika 34. Hi everyone, I'm Nithika 34, and my story is about the eerie eyes that watched us in the dark on the Appalachian Trail. This happened a few years ago when my best friend and I decided to go on a night hike. We wanted to enjoy the starry sky and the silence of the forest. The trail was quiet and peaceful as we set up camp in one of the clearings. After setting up our tents and lighting a fire, we sat and chatted about various things. Suddenly, my friend noticed something strange. On the edge of the clearing, among the trees, 2 eyes were glowing. They were red and seemed inhuman. At first, we thought it was just a reflection of light from some animal, but the eyes didn't move and continued to watch us. We decided to get closer to find out what kind of creature it was. But as soon as we approached, the eyes disappeared. Returning to the fire, we saw the eyes again, but now there were more of them. They surrounded us on all sides, and every time we tried to get closer, they vanished. This continued for several hours, and each time the eyes appeared closer and closer. Our fear grew, and we began to panic. We heard rustling in the bushes, quiet but clear, as if someone was trying not to be noticed. Our flashlights almost didn't help the light scattered in the thick air, and it seemed like those eyes were lurking in every dark corner. We decided it was time to leave. Gathering our things, we started walking along the trail, trying not to pay attention to the appearing eyes. However, as we moved, the eyes continued to follow us, appearing now to the right, now to the left. They didn't back off. Reaching one of the shelters on the trail, we hoped to find refuge and other people. But the shelter was empty. We checked every corner but found no one. The walls of the shelter seemed oppressive, and the silence inside was deafening. We locked the doors and tried to sleep, but every rustle outside the windows made us jump up. The night dragged on endlessly. In the morning, when the fog began to lift, we risked going outside. At the site of our camp, there were no traces left, as if we had never been there. It seemed impossible given how much time we had spent setting up camp and lighting the fire. Later, we learned that this area was known for its strange phenomena. Many hikers reported seeing mysterious eyes watching them at night, but no one knows what these creatures are and why they appear. Since then, I've avoided night hikes and always steer clear of that part of the trail. My life has changed. Even now, in the comfort of my home, I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night feeling someone's gaze on me. I don't know what those creatures were, but I'm sure they're more than just a legend. Story 3: The Unusual Hiker. Author Mountain Maddie. Hi, I'm Mountain Maddie, and my story is about meeting a mysterious hiker on the Appalachian Trail. It happened a few years ago when my group of friends and I went on a hike. We were enjoying nature and great weather. One day we came across an old hiker who looked very strange. His clothes were old-fashioned, as if from another era, and he seemed lost. We offered him help, but he just smiled oddly and said he was looking for his family. He spoke quietly and slowly, and his voice was somewhat detached. We thought he might be lost and offered to go with us, but he refused and walked off in another direction. A few hours later, continuing our way, we met him again on the same trail. He looked just as lost and repeated that he was looking for his family. We offered him help again, but he disappeared into the forest before we could do anything. This encounter haunted me. When I got home, I decided to look up information about this area and came across an old story. Several decades ago, a whole family disappeared on this trail, and the eldest son went searching for them but also disappeared. Since then, no one has seen either him or his family. I began to believe we had encountered the ghost of this hiker. His soul, it seems, still roams the trail searching for his family. Now, I know the Appalachian Trail has many mysterious and frightening stories, and this is one of them. Since then, I've tried to be more attentive and cautious on my hikes. One day, several months after our hike, I returned to the same place with another group of friends. We decided to spend the night in the same section of the trail. That night, I couldn't sleep and decided to step outside for some fresh air. Standing by the fire, I saw that old hiker again. He stood at the edge of the clearing and looked at me. I screamed, but my friends didn't hear me. He approached closer and quietly asked, "Have you seen my family?" I couldn't speak out of fear and just shook my head. He disappeared into the darkness again, and I ran back to the tent. The next day, I told my friends what happened, but they didn't believe me. This encounter left a deep mark on me. Now, I always carry a map and compass and try never to go on hikes without preparation. I know there might be something on the trail we don't understand, and I no longer want to meet it alone. Story 4: The House in the Woods. Author Woodsman 87. Hi everyone, I'm Woodsman 87, and my story is about the eerie house I found in the woods. One day, I decided to take a break and step off the trail to explore the surroundings. I loved exploring new places and often ventured off the main trail to find something interesting. Deep in the forest, I came across an old, abandoned house. It looked like no one had lived in it for many years. The door was slightly ajar, and I decided to go inside. Inside, it was empty, but the atmosphere was oppressive. The walls were covered in mold, and the floors creaked underfoot. I felt like someone was watching me. Deciding not to linger, I headed for the exit, but suddenly saw the figure of a woman in an old-fashioned dress. She stood motionless and looked directly at me. Her eyes were empty, and I felt a chill run down my spine. In fear, I ran out of the house and headed back to the trail. When I turned to look at the house, I saw that it had vanished, as if it had never been there. Back on the trail, I told other hikers about what happened. One of them, an old man, said that the house was a legend. Many years ago, a woman lived in that house who lost her entire family and went mad. Since then, her ghost has wandered the forest, and many claim to have seen her. This story changed my attitude towards hiking. I always considered myself a skeptic, but now I know that there might be something more in the forest than just trees and animals. I try to be more careful and never step off the trail unless absolutely necessary. Several months later, I found myself in that area again. This time, I was with a group of friends, and we decided to check if the house really existed. We walked through the forest for several hours but found nothing resembling that old house. However, in the evening, as we set up camp and sat by the fire, I saw that woman again. She stood at the edge of the clearing and looked at us. I screamed and pointed at her, but my friends saw nothing. They thought I had gone mad. The next day, we continued our journey and I tried to forget what had happened. But as we delved deeper into the forest, I began to feel like something was following us. Rustling in the bushes, quiet steps behind our backs, all this kept me on edge. When we reached the next shelter, I decided to talk to the locals. One of them, an old forester, told me that this area had long been known for its oddities. He told me that many years ago, a family lived here who died under mysterious circumstances. Since then, people often see the ghosts of this family, especially the woman. My life changed after that hike. I became more cautious and always stick to the main trails. Now I know there might be something more in the forest than just nature. And if you ever decide to step off the trail, be prepared to meet something you can't explain. Thank you for watching our episode. If you enjoyed these creepy stories, don't forget to like and subscribe to StoryVoyage so you won't miss out on new horrors and mysterious tales. Leave your comments and share your own stories if you have any chilling experiences you'd like to tell. Until next time, and be careful out there in the woods.